A wedding in Lahore that promised honor and new beginnings ended before dawn with a man dead and a bride in handcuffs. This is a story about vows, secrets, and a single discovery that forced a choice with irreversible consequences. Have you ever been at a celebration where something in the room felt off, a glance, a small exchange, and you suspected a private truth was about to break the surface? That quiet warning is where this story begins. We follow Amina, thoughtful, educated, carrying hopes that never quite aligned with family plans. We follow Farhan, confident, trusting, ready to start a new life. And we follow Zain, a friend so close he was treated like a brother, but who carried an unspoken desire. Early in the day, Amina found messages. Messages that exposed a closeness she had not expected and a crossing of lines that put her safety and honor at risk. By nightfall she faced a choice. Stay silent and keep the peace for the sake of family, or confront a dangerous betrayal in the hope of protecting what she still valued. If careful, human stories matter to you, please tap like and subscribe now. If you decide not to, tell us why in the comments. Your answer will tell us something important about how we respond to moments of crisis. Lahore moves like a city of layered voices. Markets and mosques share the same skyline as new office towers, and family life is often lived under the bright attention of neighbors. Here, weddings are communal contracts as much as private promises. They tie families together, shift social ties, and are measured in both celebration and obligation. Amina Qureshi grew up with the kind of education that opened doors and the kind of responsibilities that quietly closed them. She had finished university, studied with the thought of a future that might include work and independence. Yet when her family arranged a marriage with Farhan Malik, she accepted. In her culture, refusal could accumulate consequences, whispers, strained relationships, less freedom for the rest of her life. She chose what many before her had chosen, a compromise between personal desire and familial duty. Farhan believed in stability and partnership. He ran a small business and kept close bonds in his neighborhood. To him, marriage was the next step toward respectability and a family life that would support his plans. He trusted those around him. Trust, to him, was not merely an option but the foundation of social life. Zain Abbas had a history with Farhan stretching back to childhood. He was quick with a joke, easy to include, and rarely out of a group photo. Many respected him, some admired his confidence. Yet under the easy charm was a pattern of possessiveness toward what he valued. In a culture that prizes loyalty, that possessiveness can become an internal argument. Private cravings against public bonds, the stakes in this story were not only emotional. They were social and practical. A single scandal could damage reputations and reparable relationships across two families. In a community that watches carefully, what happens behind closed doors often reaches far beyond those doors. That context explains why Amina's discovery had the force to change the direction of a night that began as celebration. Amina acted like someone who had rehearsed restraint. Her answers were measured, her gestures refined, but her eyes carried questions. She had dreams that belonged to her alone, a possible career, a life where choices were less scripted. On the outside she fit the role expected of her, inside she felt the tension between what she wanted and what was expected. Farhan was steady in a way that comforted those around him. He trusted people easily, or at least confidently. He had organized many events, managed relationships in business, and believed that family alliances were to be honored. He expected his friends to behave with the same straightforward loyalty he offered. Zain was closer than a typical friend. They had shared adolescent mischief and adult challenges. For years his presence had been a constant, for years he had been the person who could be relied upon when plans felt uncertain. But dependency can be mistaken for entitlement. Over time, his feelings toward Amina shifted from protective to possessive. He had started to see the life others planned for Amina as something he regretted not claiming for himself. Each person carried intentions that looked reasonable inside their own minds. Yet intentions do not exist in a vacuum. Once Amina discovered the messages, those private thoughts were forced to confront reality. The ceremonies blended ritual and spectacle. The mehndi filled a courtyard with color and laughter, henna designs like delicate maps on bridesmaids' hands. The nikah was formal and solemn, vows spoken amid family elders who watched for signs of harmony. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Inside, the house felt like a stage where everyone played a part. Through the festivities, Amina's smile was real enough to the casual eye, but she moved with a reserve that suggested attention drifting inward. At times her gaze flicked in a specific direction, stopping on a face that had been familiar since childhood. Zayn watched closely, occasionally close enough to whisper a comment that made Farhan laugh. No one noticed those whispers as anything but friendly. Small moments later took on the force of hindsight. A misplaced phone on a table. A hastily discarded glass beside a folding chair. A lingering look caught on camera that, when replayed for gossip, would be sorted into motives that only later became evidence. At the reception, guests toasted, danced, and photographed. Family elders exchanged pleasantries while younger cousins crowded the sidelines. This was a public affirmation: we see this union as sanctioned, important. In many ways, that public approval made Amina's private knowledge more difficult. Confronting betrayal at such a time meant risking not only personal scandal but a rupture that would be recorded in conversation and memory. At the end of a long day, everyone retired to a suite prepared for the new couple, expecting the quiet that follows any celebration. They expected gratitude and the intimacy that seals a union. None of them expected confrontation. If this story is the kind you want more of, hit like now and join our community. If you won't, tell us below why you chose not to. It helps us understand what viewers want. Earlier that afternoon, while helping with a last-minute detail, Amina noticed a phone left on a table. It belonged to Zayn. Curiosity may have led her to glance at it. The retreat was brief, a reflex. What she read stopped her. Text exchanges with an unknown number were intimate and persistent. The tone shifted from friendly to personal. The messages were addressed in a way that suggested affection and claims of longing. In short, the language Amina found made clear that Zayn had been pursuing her beyond friendly boundaries. She read several messages, paused, reread, and felt the weight of what those words implied. This was not a casual flirtation. It was a repeated effort to become someone else's confidant and perhaps more. The implication was simple and immediate: Zayn had crossed a line that should never be crossed in the life of a friend who was also the groom's closest companion. Amina had options. She could have saved the evidence, told a trusted family member, or confronted Zayn privately. Each choice had possible outcomes: rumor, shame, anger, or violence. In a culture where honor is carefully guarded, the smallest breach can create a tidal wave of consequences. She left the room with the knowledge lodged like a stone in her chest. The remainder of the day continued around her in bright colors and music, but the quiet in her mind had been altered forever. If you think you would simply walk away after finding such a thing, ask yourself why. If you won't subscribe to hear how this plays out and learn from it, at least let us know why in the comments. When guests departed and the suite returned to shadow and hush, Amina considered the options carefully. She watched Farhan sleep and felt both affection and a protective impulse. She weighed the cost of telling him immediately against the cost of letting the story fester into rumor. The choice she made was tactical. She decided to confront the person responsible rather than start a family argument in front of dozens of relatives. Her steps through the corridor were slow, each footfall measured against the possibility of escalation. The hotel hallway was largely silent, other rooms slept. Her mind rehearsed what she would say, measured words, evidence at hand, the demand for explanation. Zayn had been in a guest room nearby. When she knocked, his door opened before she could set the rhythm of her confrontation. The small exchange of words quickly revealed the nature of his feelings. At first he tried to deflect, then to charm, then to claim remorse. But as the conversation continued, a different mask slipped: irritation, then anger. His voice lost patience. His eyes hardened in a way that surprised her. She did not expect violence at first. She expected denial, perhaps an awkward apology and a promise to remain respectful. The reality shifted faster than she could steady herself. Words became sharper. Zayn's initial denials gave way to a confession. He admitted that he had felt something for Amina for months. He said that watching the marriage proceed felt like a loss he could not tolerate. His tone moved between pleading and accusation. He had watched them grow close, he told her, and he had tried to remain a friend. But the presence of the wedding, the vows, the public acceptance, all of it pushed his feelings into something less contained. Amina listened and tried to stay calm. She reminded him of the harm this would bring if exposed and asked him to step back. She asked him to consider Farhan, the family, and the cost of any action born of his resentment. Her words were precise and restrained, because she understood that loose phrasing could be used against her. Zayn's responses grew volatile. He accused her of dismissing him, of taking for granted the care he had shown. He demanded recognition in a voice that left no room for compromise. The heightening emotion made Amina step back. She wanted him to leave the hallway, to return to his room, to close a door on what had begun. Instead he followed, closer, speaking in a voice that lost itself to impatience. Physical contact happened fast. A push, a hand raised, a scuffle that included both reaching and resisting. One moment was an argument, the next, an accident that would not remain an accident. In the struggle, something struck Zayn. It could have been a fall against a hard corner, a strike thrown in fear, or a misshapen movement meant only to push him away. Whatever the mechanical cause, the result was a serious blow to his head. He crumpled, and the air shifted from heated confrontation to urgent silence. Amina froze. The enormity of the result hit like a wave. She checked for signs of life. Zayn's breathing faltered. Panic took over all reason for a moment as she sought help. Farhan woke to the noise and the commotion, and within the hour the hotel staff and police were at the door. At a moment like this, who is responsible? Tell us what you think in the comments, your opinion will be part of the conversation. And if you're watching, consider subscribing. There are more stories that force us to ask difficult questions about trust and action. If you watch and decline to engage, to share, to comment, to subscribe, after seeing how one moment changed so many lives, ask yourself what that silence means. By dawn the suite had been transformed into a scene of inquiry. Flashing lights, whispered questions, and the quiet bustle of officials replaced the music and laughter from the night before. Zayn was rushed to a hospital but did not recover. The coroner's preliminary notes suggested severe head trauma. The line between accident and assault would be investigated. Amina was taken into custody for questioning. Her hands shook, and her voice faltered when she described the events. She insisted she had not intended harm. She had gone to speak and to stop something that could have ruined more than a single relationship. She stated the sequence of events plainly, a reading of messages, a confrontation, an exchange that turned violent. Witnesses offered differing recollections, and the truth would be contested in statements and in court. The family reacted in varying ways. Farhan's face held a shocked bewilderment that folded quickly into grief. He had lost a friend and faced an unraveling of his personal life already fragile with public scrutiny. He stood beside Amina at first, but the pressure from relatives, the media, and the legal process made consistent support difficult. Neighbors and extended family members spoke to reporters. Rumors spread, as they often do. Yet amidst the noise, a central fact remained: a person had died and a woman who only hours before had seemed a bride now faced charges that could end a life behind bars. If you find yourself watching and feeling removed, remember, these were human beings with families. If you won't click subscribe to keep listening to stories that humanize such events, at least leave a comment explaining why not. Police took statements, gathered physical evidence, and reconstructed the timeline. Hotel security footage, witness accounts, and the phone records became key elements. Some neighbors said they heard raised voices. A hotel worker reported seeing Amina leave the room and come back in a state of distress. Zayn's messages to the unknown number were presented as evidence of his obsession. They showed a pattern of intimate appeals that clearly crossed common boundaries. The prosecution focused on the outcome. A man had died during the disturbance and someone had to be held accountable. The defense emphasized provocation and fear, arguing the blow was either accidental or an act of defense after sustained provocation. Motive, intent, and the degree of force used would be the battlefield in court. Public reaction was intense. News outlets recounted the story with the immediacy that feeds ratings. Social media divided along predictable lines. Some voices demanded justice for the deceased, others reminded viewers that in domestic disturbances, the actions of all parties can be complex and confusing. Farhan faced his own choices. He had been the groom and the friend to the man now dead. In public he expressed sorrow for the loss. Privately, his family asked difficult questions about judgment, loyalty, and the role of answers that would either heal or harm the families involved. In court, testimony unfolded in the sterile cadence of legal drama. Witnesses gave versions that varied in tone and detail. Friends and family attempted to reconcile affection with an interpretation of what had really happened. The judge and jury had to weigh evidence against human frailty. The verdict did not erase the personal ruin that had followed the event. Regardless of legal outcome, reputations had been battered. Extended family ties frayed under pressure. The community, which had once cheered the union, now debated assignment of blame in markets and at prayer meetings. The tragedy left the families navigating a landscape of grief and recrimination. Amina, whatever the legal conclusion, left the proceeding altered. Her education and aspirations sat amid the wreckage of a life that had been intended to be stable. Farhan suffered both loss and the weight of social scrutiny. Zayn's family felt the helplessness of mourning a son whose choices had led to a tragic end. This story does not lend itself to simple judgments. It is a reminder that relationships that appear simple from the outside are often complicated on the inside. It shows how unspoken feelings, when left unresolved, can become dangerous. It shows the particular pressures a culture puts on individuals to preserve family honor at the cost of personal safety. Lessons emerge clearly. Do not ignore signs that a relationship has shifted into a stalking pattern. Seek help from trusted authorities or counselors before confronting someone alone. Consider the presence of neutral witnesses or secure settings when engaging in difficult conversations. For families, fostering environments where concerns can be raised safely without immediate judgment can prevent escalation. Moral clarity does not erase human error. Fear, shame, and the need to protect reputation can prompt choices that later bring regret. For those who witness the events and those who judge from afar, the hard task is to balance the demand for accountability with an awareness of how pressure and emotion can distort behavior. If this story moved you, subscribe for more careful retellings that aim to understand rather than simply sensationalize. Share the video if you think others should hear these lessons on how to confront dangerous situations safely. Comment below with your thoughts. Would you have confronted Zayn in Amina's place, or chosen another path? If you watched all the way through and still won't subscribe or share, ask yourself what keeps you silent when families face public scrutiny. Your engagement can help bring attention to stories that teach prevention and compassion. Thank you for listening. Stories like this are painful but necessary. They remind us that honesty, safety, and the courage to seek help can matter more than reputation alone. If you want more episodes that examine such human complexities, hit subscribe, ring the bell, and join the conversation. If you won't, tell us why. Your answer helps shape how we cover these difficult, human stories.